Hi, this is Andy with One Way Pest Solutions out of Boston, Massachusetts, and you are listening to the world's #1 pest control training podcast, the Pest Geek Podcast with Frank Hernandez.
Pull out your hose and grab your can. We're about to integrate another Pest Geek podcast. Hi, everybody. Frank Hernandez here, and welcome to the Pest Geek podcast, bringing you the latest information on pests, products, and politics from today's leading industry sources to help you start, manage, and grow your pest control business.
Hey, welcome back. Welcome back to another edition of the Pest Geek podcast. I am your host, Frank Hernandez, here every day discussing all things pest. And I want to remind everybody to join the Pest Geek Society. Join the revolution of what's happening in the pest control industry. Join us on Facebook, Pest Geek Podcast Listeners Group. We're also on Twitter. We're on YouTube, PestGeekPodcast.com. Join us. Join in on the conversation. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you need to be more successful. Contribute, engage. And now here's Jeff McGovern with today's topic.
Thank you, Frank. This is Jeff McGovern, the Pest Coach. And today I just want to chat a little bit about branding and maybe a little bit more about equipment and purpose-built equipment. But let's take a look at that situation with branding first, because I had a conversation yesterday with Jim Harper. And Jim Harper is a gentleman that owns Technicide. That's the company that gives us the fabulous Exacticide Duster, the Tech Reach, and the Tech Base Station. Now, Jim is very, very focused on branding. In other words, not just the logo that you have, but how you work in the field and the image that you put out so that your customers or potential customers can feel comfortable with your firm. In other words, your brand by your action. And this is very important across the board, particularly in an industry like we have that's so incredibly competitive. Especially in the marketplace where I live here in Florida, there are pest control companies out the yin-yang. And as I travel around the state and I meet with different groups, I see pest control trucks crisscrossing on a daily basis. Friendly competitors, yes, but still competitors, which means the general public is making a choice as to who they want to use because they respect and they feel safe using that brand. In other words, what I mentioned a week or so ago with regards to peace of mind. But Jim Harper brought up some very good points, and he's done some email blasts on that recently, and they are definitely worth tracking down and taking a look at. And I know that in the future, Mr. Harper himself will be a guest on the Pest Geek Podcast broadcast, so that you folks will be able to hear firsthand from the man himself what he believes in this industry and hear about the equipment that he puts out. But let me take a few moments and talk about what we do to our employees as a service manager, as a branch manager, owner of a business. How do we make them feel while they're out doing their job based on the decisions we make to equip them? And I see problems with this from time to time, and sometimes it's a very subtle issue, but it's certainly one where we have to respect that employee in the field and equip them in such a manner that they can truly go and do the job we're asking them to do. Let's say, for example, we've got somebody going into a commercial restaurant account. Holy cow! That's a lot of work. Are we giving them enough time based on the pricing model that we have to truly get that job done, or are we pricing it bargain basement? We can't do that. Now, let's take a look at something very simple like a duster. Are we sending somebody into that commercial restaurant account carrying a simple little hand duster? maybe a Get-style duster or a small puffer duster, that's a fine piece of equipment. There's nothing wrong with it. But if you're facing an entire commercial facility with it, a restaurant, for example, that little hand duster is going to take you all night to get the job done. And you know what? You probably won't get it done because you don't have enough airflow to float the material back where it needs to be. Therefore, the reason for the existence of Mr. Harper's Exacticide duster. But you have to think about the employee that you're sending in there to do battle, if you will, carrying something in the palm of their hand when they really need to be carrying something in both hands to do the job properly and get it done and put out the amount of material and distribute it properly within the account. But it's other things. It's not just the duster we send them in with. I've seen pest control companies out with, the type of hand sprayer that you see at a Lowe's or a Home Depot. Now, I can certainly understand some type of one-shot work being done with a disposable device in some cases. That probably does make sense. But the public expects us to have professional-looking tools in the field. And so if that technician is walking in with that professional-looking tool, be it a B&G or an Aerofog or an Incestec sprayer, does it look okay? Is it all beat up and dented? Does it leak? Does it drip? I mean, come on. Put your people in the field with equipment that looks like it's supposed to be there and can actually get the job done. What if we're talking something along the lines of a bait station? There are some companies that reuse everybody else's bait stations. So that means the technician going out to an account, he may have 3 or 4 different keys to work his way through the same account with a bunch of busted up old equipment. You know what? There's no reason to do that. Even if your new client owns the bait stations, if they're not in the shape they need to be sold some more devices. And try to stay with the same key, because even though you're trying out different stations, and it's all wonderful and good with regards to M&S in the office, and you're going to hold costs down, try to at least keep the same bait stations at the same sites, so that your technician is not out there fumbling around trying to change a piece of equipment. And the other thing you want to look at is how easy to deploy are the devices you're putting out. Quite frankly, a technician with a bunch of patio blocks and bait stations and glue is not a happy technician. They don't hold up properly, they break, they fall apart at the worst possible times, and the technician has to go through a bunch of nonsense to get everything cleaned up and reconnected. And you know what? It probably isn't going to stay in place anyway. If you're going to use bait stations with attached anchors, for heaven's sakes, use ones that are factory set up so they hold together properly. The Easy Secure from VM Products comes to mind every time in this regard. The bait station that Jim Harper has, the Technibator, is an excellent device that also you can get with a built-in weight. There are stations as well that have weights on the inside, although in my personal experience, I would rather have the weight attached to the outside of the station rather than a block inside the station. And the reason I say that was when I was still running my test site in north central Florida close to the house, we did have a few issues where those blocks inside got wet, and they stayed wet for a long time and caused issues with the bait, whereas the stations with the blocks on the outside did not. So just a small example in my own situation where that was a problem. But what this really comes back to is, putting that technician in the field with equipment that's going to make them feel confident they can get the job done and not stand around making a fool out of themselves. And that's real easy to do with a caulking gun and a bunch of patio blocks. And it's also real easy to do with a nail gun or an anchor gun trying to shoot a base station into the ground. And, you know, you get a little distracted and blow the bottom out of the station a little bit, and you got to do it again and again. So equip them properly with that type of gear that's going to be easy to use in the field. And while it may cost a little bit more, you know what? That's okay, because you're going to save it in labor time. And if you've got your technicians equipped properly, chances are you probably won't lose them. Now, the other thing that comes into play with equipment in the field is, does the stuff I have fit the technician I gave it to? And a classic example of that is when I see a route truck out running around with a ladder rack on top and everything secure the way it's supposed to be, and the ladder has a rating of, say, 225 pounds, and I've got an extremely capable technician that weighs 290 pounds. He's a bodybuilder. He's built like a rock. But there's no way he should be using that ladder. I've even got photographs of wrestler-sized technicians using little teeny tiny ladders because their boss said the heavy-duty ladders are too expensive. Maybe you could borrow one from a customer. Come on. Really? But that's the kind of stuff that goes on. And I hate seeing it. The other thing is, for heaven's sakes, make sure on a personal basis, if you have a technician with double XL hands, he's not running around out there with gloves that are large, or worse yet, one size fits all. Because we all know it does not fit all. And I've just damn near crippled my technician trying to cram his hands into little tiny gloves that he's trying to use because he's trying to use proper PPE. So all those little things that we do, we have to make things easier for the tech. I dare say maybe we need to look at some of the uniforms we buy for our people, but all I really ask is that they meet the PPE criteria, they're comfortable to wear, they fit halfway decent so the people can move, and there's a process that they can wash their clothes and keep them clean, be it a uniform company or taking it home themselves with the proper instructions on how not to put various types of toxicants into their own washing machine. So take care of your folks in that regard too. Make them look good. Protect your brand. Now, with regards to some of the other things regarding equipment and technologies, electronics are wonderful. I love my iPhone. But you know what? We have a lot of people out there that aren't real good at using a phone. And yeah, some of them are probably over the age of 50. So before you issue those things to anyone, don't just hand them the phone, say go for it, tiger, and push the button. Take them through a training class so they can learn how to use the device effectively in the field and not look like an idiot in the face of their customers, because that's just not fair to them. These employees are some of your most valuable assets. You take care of them, they'll take care of you. And by the way, consider putting those devices, those phones that we're now using in the field, in some type of a waterproof, shockproof case so that we don't have embarrassing moments when a device is dropped and it breaks right there in somebody's kitchen, garage, or industrial facility. The two cases that I've used that I find very effective for my iPhones anyway would be the Catalyst and the LifeProof case. I've got both of them. They work well, and you know what? When they wear out, I go ahead and replace them, and my iPhones on the inside are just fine. So today was a little bit of rambling. We'll get back into some straight-up pest issues in some upcoming podcasts. But these are just a few of the things I wanted to say and I wanted to bring out because the ladies and gentlemen behind the wheels of those route trucks on a daily basis are representing this entire industry. And they're representing their company's brands every day. And if we're not behind the wheel of those trucks, if we own the business or manage the business in any fashion, everything we do has to be to support those ladies and gentlemen in the field so that they can treat our customers right, build our businesses, and provide for this entire industry in the future. And so with that, this is Jeff McGovern, the Pest Coach. And Frank, I'll turn it back to you, sir.
We hope you have enjoyed this edition of the Pest Geek Podcast. Have a pestacular day.
Thank you for listening to the Pest Geek Podcast. If you have enjoyed the Pest Geek Podcast, please give us a rating, write a review, or subscribe to the channel. You can join the Pest Geek Society by visiting pestgeekpodcast.com. Thank you for listening. See you next time.